Winter, 1578. A fortress lies buried beneath snow and silence. No movement, no surrender, no sound. For weeks, an army has waited outside its walls, expecting hunger and cold to do what weapons could not. And when they finally force their way inside, they don't find a battle. They find something far more chilling. They find men who chose death over defeat. This is the story of the Siege of Gvozdansko, a last stand so grim, so resolute, that even the victors would leave in silence, shaken by what they had witnessed inside those frozen walls. It is a story, not of conquest, but of endurance pushed beyond human limits. Deep in the rugged hills of Croatia stood Gvozdansko Fortress, a small but valuable stronghold protecting nearby silver mines. It wasn't a massive castle or legendary citadel, just a modest stone outpost on a dangerous frontier between the Habsburg lands and the expanding Ottoman Empire. That frontier was never peaceful. It was a constant clash of empires, faiths, and ambition. In late 1577, that tension finally reached Gvozdansko. A powerful Ottoman force, led by Ferhad Pasha, marched on the fortress. Thousands of seasoned soldiers surrounded a garrison of barely 150 defenders. Croatian soldiers, miners, and local townspeople who had little training but strong resolve. They were outnumbered, outmatched, and completely alone. No reinforcements were coming. No escape routes existed. Only the walls between them and an overwhelming army. The Ottomans quickly sealed the fortress, cutting off every supply line. No food, no firewood, no communication, no relief. But instead of risking heavy losses in a direct assault, Ferhad Pasha chose patience. He would let winter become his weapon. Days turned into weeks. The cold deepened relentlessly. Snow piled high against the stone walls, and icy winds cut through every crack and opening. Inside the fortress, survival became a daily struggle. The defenders burned anything they could find: furniture, beams, doors, tools, anything that could produce even a moment of warmth. Smoke filled the rooms. Firelight flickered weakly against exhausted faces. But eventually, there was nothing left to burn. Then the food ran out. Hunger arrived slowly at first. Then, all at once. Men who once stood firm on the walls now struggled to walk. Conversations became rare. Energy vanished. Every movement cost strength they no longer had. And still, they held. Ferhad Pasha offered them terms. Surrender, and you will live. It was a simple offer, one that promised survival in exchange for defeat. But the gates of Gvozdansko never opened, because inside, this was no longer just a military situation. It had become something deeper: duty, loyalty, identity. To abandon the fortress was to abandon everything they believed they were protecting. So they stayed. By January 1578, hope had almost entirely disappeared. The fires were gone. The food was gone. The men were fading, one by one. The cold did not strike suddenly. It crept in quietly. Fingers went numb first, then feet, then strength, then awareness itself. Some collapsed at their posts, others simply stopped moving where they stood. But even as death closed in, no one fled, no one broke formation, no one surrendered. The fortress was still being held, even as its defenders disappeared. Then one morning, something felt wrong to the Ottoman army outside. There were no sounds, no shouting from the walls, no movement on the ramparts, no signs of life at all, only silence. Suspicious, they advanced carefully, expecting deception or a final desperate trap. The gates were forced open. Soldiers entered with weapons drawn, but no attack came. Inside, they found something no one expected. The defenders were still at their posts, frozen in place. Some stood upright, still gripping their weapons as if ready for battle. Others sat slumped against cold stone walls. A few lay where they had fallen, never to rise again. Every single man had remained exactly where duty had placed him. Not one had tried to escape. Not one had surrendered. Not one had abandoned the fortress. They had not fallen in combat, but in endurance, pushed far beyond human limits. Even Ferhad Pasha, a commander hardened by years of war, was reportedly shaken by what he saw. There was no celebration, no looting, no victory cries. Instead, he ordered that the fallen defenders be given proper burials with full military honors. An enemy commander, honoring the men who refused to yield even when all hope was gone. It was a rare moment of respect across the divide of war. The Siege of Gvozdansko was not a victory in the traditional sense. The fortress fell, the defenders died, but their stand became something greater than survival or defeat. It became a symbol of absolute endurance of men who chose duty over life itself, and refused to surrender even when survival was no longer possible. In a world where surrender was often the only path left, they chose none.